is part of the path to knowing that bravery. You don't get to just skip over it. So I think that the last thing I'd like to say, as a sort of plug for loneliness, it has a really bad rap, as does sadness in our society. And I don't know if you've been reading, there were a couple of things in the Times about how people who sort of report that they feel sad frequently or that they feel lonely frequently, they assess situations more accurately, and they remember moments of beauty more specifically and piquantly, and can more accurately describe them, write them down, draw them, etc., than people who walk through the world feeling only kind of, cheerful and have a sense of bonhomie. And of course that can devolve into depression, in which the sense perceptions are not activated. But in this sort of like cultural terror of depression, we miss out on this whole vast area of subtlety and beauty in being human. Because there's also a direct correlation between love and sadness and beauty, obviously. And now what they sort of found, like in these studies, it's really interesting. Like, it sort of seems to be true. And in fact, I'm always suspicious of these like brain things, but the brain tends to light up when a human feels sad about something. And they say, yes, I feel sad, I feel lonely. And it's generally the same regions of the brain where people say, yes, I feel love. I feel love. So perhaps there is no difference even on a biological level or a neurochemical level. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about the sense that when you're feeling complete and loved and everything feels that hunky-dory feeling, there's not much room for anything else. It's like it's full. But when you're feeling sorrowful, that's like a spacious in a way. It's an empty. There's an empty space. There's room for something else to come in, and I think it's sort of like that with artistry as well. Artists often have to enter a place that's really sad before something can come out. It's not that they're sad about anything, but that there's that, again, the sense of something not being there, so that something can come out. And a lot of artists do fall into depression. They go too far one way or the other, and then it becomes unstable or it becomes an unworkable reality. But that there is that edginess of openness and tenderness that allows something to grow out of it.
Right. Right, and the path of a practitioner, which in this community is also the path of being a warrior, you get very skillful at knowing what's what.
The edges.
Right. Where's my edge of sadness and loneliness, and where am I sort of gleaning and gaining a deeper sense of experience and being able to be brave and stay present? And when have I devolved into, or I don't know, everything sounds really judgmental about depression, like caved into, given into, I don't know. That all sounds really negative, and it's not meant to be at all, because depression is its own thing, obviously, and there are many, many reasons why it happens, but a skillful warrior is able to negotiate that terrain, and frankly, even go into depression and be curious about that. Like, what's the wisdom in depression? And then come back into sadness and loneliness and go, oh yes, it's cozy, and here's love and beauty. And then also experience joy, because of course without an experience of loneliness, you can't experience joy either. You could also say joy and love are pretty darn similar to each other. It's like different shades of the same energy in a fun way. And it's awake energy, it's just enlightened energy. So we play with the fire and get burned a lot. But there's no reason to be so afraid of some of the things that we think are burning us more than they are, like sadness and loneliness. They're not the problems that we've come to sort of relate to them as being in our culture. And what Trump Rinpoche was saying, hey man, genuine heart of sadness, that's the center of it. That's the center of the experience. It's pretty radical. And I feel like the truth, I mean, for me anyway, it's like, oh yeah, okay, somebody's telling you the truth here, instead of like, be more cheerful, or, like an external expectation of how you should feel, think, behave. But rather, if you go in and explore what shows up, and that's what he called it. Anything else? Yeah. What's your name? I don't know. Madrone. Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to share a story.
Yeah.
My dad was just recently in the hospital. He had an accident, and he was only in for 3 days. He's home now. He's okay. But it was really scary, and I spent a couple of nights with him. And every night when I left, or even the first night when I was there and he was falling asleep, and I was just stroking his head and just watching him fall asleep, I was just crying, and it was like something so beautiful about that sadness that I was feeling of possibly losing my dad and eventually losing my dad at this level. But it was like I love him so much, and I just have such a tender heart for my father, and to be able to feel that kind of love in such a real way, I don't know what it did, but I could feel it. I could feel like the love. It was like tangible. I was like, oh my gosh, my heart is like aching, or it's so heavy or light, or I don't know what it was, but it was so real.
Right.
And it just was like, oh, I really, really love my dad.
That's lovely.
It was. It's really beautiful to feel it.
I'm really glad I got into an accident so that you could. Yeah. Right. When it's actually happening to us in one way or another, it's really complicated.
It is.
And it's not this kind of mind concept of what love is.
Yeah.
It's a whole open-hearted thing.
And it's really warm.
That's
so warm it felt.
Yeah, and depression is cold,
Cold and distant and numb,
Yep.
and kind of shut down and disconnected and lots of things.
That's good. But yeah, like sadness and loneliness are like warmer.
Really warm.
Yeah.
Like really warm. I remember it was hot, it was just like, wow. You feel the blood in the body. I don't know, it was a really powerful experience. It was really powerful.
When my niece was born, I was there in the room, and it was mind-blowing to me, and I walked around for days afterwards with a similar experience, and it was in California, it was in Berkeley, and like on 2 separate occasions, 2 dudes with, their Rastafarian hair and their whatever, they both came up to me and said, hey man, you're like so sad. and they both had advice on how to get over it. And I was like, that's really funny, because it's just this other thing, that my niece was born and it was beyond concept, and I was in a different space. Right. Anything else? Yeah. What's your name, please?
Lisa.
Lisa.
I was going to say that I feel like culturally we're not allowed to spend any time in that sadness, unless maybe you're a monk or something. I feel like we're expected to be on all the time.
Right.
And like the Rasta's coming up to you and trying to like fix it for you. We're expected to just function and be on. And I feel like culturally we're not given permission to take a time out and be sad for a little while.
Right.
And
don't you feel kind of unloved?
I
People don't love you for who you are?
Actually.
Yeah.
Like your experience sounds like a really profound experience. I'm like, oh, I wish I felt that way about my parents. I feel a little gypped. Like, I want the permission or the ability or the opportunity maybe to just like go into there and like, okay, what's the wisdom of sadness? But you have to be on. You have to get up and go to work the next day, and you can't be sad. You have to be like,
Right, right. And then we like have these excuses, like someone gets into a car accident or a baby is born or whatever. And, but then, you know, what happens is that all the sadnesses we haven't been working with, they all get channeled into that. And then it can be devastating. So when a parent or a spouse or a pet, or it doesn't matter, like they die and it's like, it's every pain and sadness and depression you've ever had that you have to work with and mourn with.
but then again, I feel like you're expected to get over that, right? Like,
Absolutely.
you can't spend any time.
When Princess Diana was killed, I was watching the BBC and someone said she'd been dead for maybe 3 hours. And a reporter shoved her microphone into some spokesperson's face and said, "Do you think there's any possibility that there's been some healing yet?" And I went, what? It was so like that. It was so like, get over it immediately. Yeah. Well, and what Trungpa Rinpoche is suggesting is that we start to shift our allegiance from thinking that on is about pretending or not experiencing what we're experiencing right now. That in fact, on is being authentic and being whatever you're experiencing in that moment authentically. So sometimes it's just devastation, but mostly it's more complicated than that. We're sad 1 second, and then we're happy the next, and then we're frustrated, and then, you know, we go through such incredible variations in a given day. And it doesn't have to have a particular face put on it, or a cover put over it. That we can start to live our lives genuinely, that's what being a warrior is. That a warrior like doesn't pretend anything. And so we're afraid that if we do that, we'll end up being a raging bitch, or we'll like become completely out of